Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm joined tonight for the half-time analysis by Laura Bradburn, Natasha Meikle, Russell Boyce and Lawrence Connolly. Welcome all back. First 45 minutes of yourself watching the women's team, Laura. What was your thoughts? Sum up your thoughts on that first half.
I think certainly compared to the highlights of the games that I'd seen before, this one was a little bit less sort of frantic for me. Not as many clear-cut chances, but definitely a game worth watching. The Hibs team, although I'm not familiar with them, you can't help but have biases from watching the men's game. You just expect Celtic to be so much better than them, but Hibs have actually shown themselves to be a really strong team and are putting up a good game. So. It's been a decent first half so far. Glad that Celtic got back in just before half time, obviously, and hopefully can go on and make something of it in the second half.
Now, normally I go to Lawrence and ask him how he felt the officials did, but tonight I'm going to ask him if there's an issue with that pitch, Lawrence. It doesn't look the best, does it?
No, they should have watered it before tonight's game. We've had a few dry days, even in East Kilbride, so. Yeah, the pitch is looking a bit sticky. Definitely, the sooner they get back to Celtic Park and playing their games there, the better, I think.
Without a doubt. Now,
yeah.
A few weeks ago, Natasha, you were asked to appear on Sky Sports, and it's like, when you do it, you've got to switch your phone off for 40 hours because it goes into meltdown, and a lot of the stuff, unfortunately, isn't that great. And I remember when I did it, I was accused of all sorts, but one thing that really hit me hard was I was accused of wearing a Matalan jacket. So, Russell Boyce, on that note, talking of jackets, talk us through Fran Alonso's choice of jacket and jersey combo.
He's getting close to a bus, I'm telling you that right now. He is getting close to his bus. If that's what he's going for, I'm telling you, he's winning. I thought it was a superb outfit.
Yes.
I was gonna wear something quite similar for the halftime analysis, but I thought it's not right to do it if we're not ahead. So there is now extra motivation. If Celtic win, I will be in Fran Alonso attire for the full-time reaction. How about that?
Oh, I look forward to that, Russell. Absolutely.
So,
the big question is, does he have a Ferrari 365 Spider in the car park, like Sonny Crockett? Because he's certainly dressed like him, isn't he?
He is.
I thought more along the lines of a Wham tribute act, but there you go.
That would work. Now, one thing I didn't actually mention before the game is that Hibs' very own Joelle Murray is appearing tonight on A State of Mind. She joined Amy Canavan on Soccer Supernova a couple of weeks ago, and that is going to air at 7 o'clock tonight. So you've got a whole hour chatting to Joelle Murray, who I think was one of the most impressive performers for Hibs in that first half. Following that particular show, we've got Mark Sharp and the Bicycle Thieves. So they come from West Lothian. It seems as though there's a hub of musical talent coming out of that area at the moment. I mean, we've mentioned in the past Lewis Capaldi, Susan Boyle, no Sharon Boyle. I don't know Sharon Boyle. Susan Boyle. It could well be that one, yes. Who knows? As well as, obviously, the Snuts and various other bands coming out there. Dictator, who we've had in the studio.
Yep.
So have a wee watch at their Unplugged session tonight at 8 o'clock. Russell, I think it'll be right up your street. You might even want to talk about it on Scream of Celtic on Tuesday night.
I'm all up for it, mate.
So there we go.
In there, Paul. I like it, mate.
All the plugs, yes. A couple of other shows happening this evening. So, looking at the performance of the first half, I've got to say, and this is taking Russell's lead, fairly disappointed by the match winner's performance in that first half. Mariah Lee, Natasha, hasn't really got going. How much of that is down to the park? That's what the commentator was blaming it on.
Yeah, a bit disappointing. I think her and Jacinta are having the same sort of issue in that these are players who like to run with the ball, have the ball at their feet. And we saw that against Rangers when Mariah came on. The ball stuck to her feet. She was skillful. She made runs. She made great passes. She's a player who likes to dribble with the ball, a few tricks. That's her game. You can't do that on a park like that. Anyone who's played on one of these Astro pitches with all those little black plastic bits knows they're an absolute nightmare. And even more so after, a dry spell like this, the ball's just sticking up and it's slowing it right down. It's slowing her play right down. And like the commentator in the game mentioned, that's perfect for, their full-backs and their defence. Slows it down, easier for them to take the ball off them. So I think, a bit disappointed with Mariah Lee, a bit disappointed with Jacinta. And to be honest, the game just feels slow and like we can't really get it going. We can't get an attack going, no momentum. I do blame the park a bit for that. But also maybe, are they looking a bit leggy? It's a big game on Wednesday night. They all put in some shift. It's a big park at Celtic Park. Maybe it took a lot more out of them than we appreciate, especially, when you've got all these games in such a short period of time after such a long break. Do they look just a bit leggy? Is the pitch adding to that? So I get that. It was important to get the goal just before half-time and get right back into the game and hopefully start to change things up a bit in the second half. But I'd definitely be looking at making a couple of changes, I think.
Yeah, 3 games in 8 days. Now, a couple of results came through, Natasha, in that first half. There was an update that Rangers were beaten Forfar 9-0, as well as the Scottish Cup game and the men's football Dundee United 3, Aberdeen 0. I'll ask you first of all about that scoreline between Rangers and Forfar. Is that really just an indication of what happens when you've got 3 professional teams in the league and when you come up against the non-professional teams, you're just going to steamroll over them?
It is, and it's exactly what we talked about before the Rangers game, is that the top 3 teams are largely going to beat all of the other teams quite easily. Maybe Hibs are the exception to that, just sort of sitting outside that top 3. Otherwise, the teams like Hearts, teams like Forfar, Spartans, they're going to steamroll these teams, like you said. So the really important games are the ones against each other, which is why it was so important for Celtic to get the win against Rangers. Rangers going into that game, on the back of 6 games, they had an aggregate scoreline of 28-0. Add another 9 goals today, so we're at 37-0 over the course 11. Of 7 games. I mean, that's mental. That's mental.
11-0 today. Thank you for
11, not 9.
11 now. I mean,
wow.
That's not how it should be at the top of this league, at the top league in Scottish women's football. And there's a lot of teams that have a lot of catching up to do. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but it creates this situation where we've got 3 teams battling out amongst themselves and then demolishing all the teams below them. So it does create a bit of disparity, and it does show why it's so important to get results against your top 3 competitors. But you have to consolidate them by then going on to win the next games. Like we said before, there's no point in beating Rangers 1-0 and then dropping points to Hibs.
It also shows you just how incredible a job Glasgow City have done when you don't have that massive brand and a massive cash injection of a Celtic or Rangers behind you. I mean, at least we're talking about a 3-horse race, whereas in Scottish football it's always a 2-horse race. And until recently Celtic dominated, and now it's back to a 2-horse race. So all this talk of British Super Leagues and everything else, Natasha, you just wonder how long it will take before we're talking about that in the women's game. I hope that doesn't happen. What I hope to see is an increase in attention, awareness, lucrative sponsorship and broadcasting deals that will then filter the money into the other teams,
Absolutely. There's no reason why clubs like Hearts and Hibs can't be putting slightly more into their women's teams. I know that they're not as cash rich as clubs like Celtic and Rangers, but they have to be able to be doing something more. And whether that's through promoting it more, making it more visible, in turn getting the sponsorship deals, there has to be something more that big clubs like these can do to help their women's teams. And first, we have to look closer to home. Let's look at Celtic. Look at the pitch our women's team are playing on. This is what's going out. This is the game that we're making visible, on a national broadcaster, and it's getting, held up because of a pitch. So if we're expecting our women's team to, go out and properly compete, why aren't we giving them access to, top class facilities? And the first one of those has to be a top class pitch to play on every weekend. So there's more that we can do as well.
No,
the only thing I would say in response to that, though, is I think from the club's point of view, you don't want to be throwing money into a pit really where you're not getting it back at the moment. It's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. They can't throw money at it without knowing they're going to get it back. And like you say, it will need sponsorship deals, it will need commercial deals and stuff like that to be paying themselves out and for the game to grow in that way before the clubs can justify putting too much money into it as well. Because the men's game is 100 years ahead of the women's game in time scale, and that's why the money is there, is because it's been built up over this time. So, the women's game is coming along, but it's probably just going to take a bit of time, I think.
Sorry, on your go, Lawrence.
A pitch should surely be one of the things that you have to. That's a basic remit. Do you know what I mean? I think I agree with that. You've got to sort of build it slowly. The other sides, but for me, the pitch that's the first box that needs ticked. You wouldn't need to play on one, and I think the gulf in what we've seen from Wednesday to today is night and day, and it doesn't suit the team at all. It's not actually done Celtic any favours. I think Lawrence raised the point; it should have been watered as well. I mean, who's not thinking of these things before it? And I think stuff like that needs to be taken more seriously. Do you know what I mean? And that's not even an investment issue. That's just common sense, isn't it?
But in fairness, the club's looking at redeveloping Barrowfield.
Nice.
So that might make a change. Obviously, could be revenue generating once the stands are in there. Whether it's on the season book or whether you open up to pay to get in, could definitely generate some revenue. But if you want to talk about pitches, Scottish football in general, how many AstroTurf artificial surfaces are there in the top flight of Scottish men's game? It's ridiculous. And it's something we could definitely legislate for. We legislate for 10,000 all-seater stadiums. Russell's touched on it. The basics is you need a good grass surface to play football on.
The thing is as well,
legislate for that.
Sorry, Lawrence. The thing as well is that I was all for the artificial pitches coming in on two provisos. One, that they would be good to play on, and two, that they would do the job of keeping the games going throughout the winter. They're not doing that. You've seen how many games Livingston have had to call off with their artificial pitch. Hamilton are the same. So if that's not going to at least deliver on that side of things, then what's the point in having them at all?
No, it's a good point, and a point well made by Lawrence as well in relation to Barrowfield. Yes, that is earmarked for use by the women's team as well as the youth teams as well, Lawrence. A historical park, the Lisbon Lions trained there. We're now going to redevelop it. But I do remember, Laura, speaking to someone at the club around this idea of Celtic having a museum. It's been an idea that's been bandied about for many, many years. It could be something that people tie into their matchday experience, or when they do the stadium tour, or indeed on a random Tuesday afternoon when they're up there at the superstore. So it would be generating cash. But the club, Peter Lawwell, actually said, if we were to spend £2 to £3 million on a museum and we don't have a good enough striker for the Champions League group stages, I'm pretty sure the vast majority of fans would be unhappy with that. So it's like you say, it's all about trying to find the revenue stream, as well as actually making that commitment financially.
Did Lowell say that the same week he signed Bio?
Well, that in actual fact,
a museum.
I'd rather have a museum than Bio. Yeah, it's a wee bit more mobile. But I was going to bring that up. If not just now, we might speak about that after the game, Lawrence. The fact that incredibly there is some interest from Tunisia for Bio. So hopefully we can do a deal similar to the one we did for Klamala and maybe get some of our money back. The teams are back out on that pitch that we've been criticising for the second half. Hopefully it'll be a better second half for the Celtic women's team, because that was fairly disappointing. It sits at 1-1. We'll be back at full time. Thanks for everyone for getting involved on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.